It's another week, another set of bad actors, malicious files, and compromised systems. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the intel being shared by our awesome InfoSec community, and a huge thank you to all those folks that take the time to share their knowledge with the rest of us. If you enjoy listening in on these intel chats and aren't in our community forum yet, then you should join the conversation. Lots of information is being shared there, and you will get it in real time. You can join us at community.limacharlie.io, and as always, for these conversations, I'm joined by the one and only Matt Bromley. How are you doing today, sir?
Chris, what's going on, man? I am doing well. It's great to see you. Great to be here. We're getting into the thick of summer, aren't we? It's really tuning up. Kids are enjoying camp, and we've got lots of fun things happening in the world. We're going to keep our magnifying glass on cybersecurity related threats. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. Let's stay on track before I start talking about the weather.
All right, here we go. Two critical local privilege escalation vulnerabilities in the Sudo utility. Yes, you heard that. The Sudo utility have been disclosed by Stratascale Cyber Research Unit. The more severe of the two exploits the rarely used chroot feature in Sudo and affects default configurations. No explicit Sudo rule is required for exploitation, which broadens the potential attack surface. Exploitation has been verified on both Ubuntu 24.04.1 and Fedora 41 server systems running vulnerable versions of Sudo versions 1.9.14 through 1.9.17. The vulnerability allows a local, unprivileged user to gain root access by crafting malicious chroot environments. The vulnerability stems from a design change introduced in Sudo version 1.9.14 that altered how command matching is performed when chroot is involved. In particular, the new logic invokes chroot command, the method, during the rule resolution phase, even before validating the user's privileges. During this phase, Sudo loads nsswitch.conf from the chroot environment and processes it as root, which includes loading shared libraries specified by NSS modules. An attacker can plant a malicious shared object inside the writable chroot directory and force Sudo to load it, resulting in arbitrary code execution as root. So I think this is one of those ones that's sort of been found in the laboratory, but still a little bit terrifying given almost everything runs Sudo, and any user on the box is going to be able to access that.
Yeah, I found this one to be a little interesting, because first off, only because I think it really highlights. Okay, here was my big takeaway from this one. Every piece of code, well, I should say up until a few years ago, but every piece of code was largely written by humans. And when humans write code, there's going to be inherently some issues with it. And in this case right here, it's just simply a local unprivileged user could escalate to root privileges if a vulnerable version is installed, and it does so, Chris, as you mentioned, by calling on the nsswitch file. And I really think that it was probably just a little bit of oversight on the author who wrote this. A patch I believe a patch has been issued. I think you might talk about this one in just a moment. We'll see. But regardless, like an awesome walkthrough from Stratascale and kind of how this thing comes about and how it works and whatnot. I found it to be like a fascinating walkthrough technically of like how the pseudo code operates, how it functions, and then where the vulnerability was found as well. And it's a fascinating kind of, really good documentation in, I guess, C, for lack of a better term, for like how vulnerabilities can be found inside of Linux binaries, or I should say Unix specific binaries, and then how they can be exploited in the different vulnerable versions that are out there. Admittedly, this does feel like an academic one. Not that it means we shouldn't worry about it, because of course, a POC code has been published. However, depending on, adversarial environment, their placement, where they're at, and things like that, you may have an adversary who's able to actually take advantage of Sudo to kind of escalate up and whatnot. So, of course, patch is going to be my biggest recommendation here. But Chris, where I'm going with this is this one doesn't scream like active nation state weaponized vulnerability or exploit or anything like that. I think it was largely, a kind of discovery from an academic or a research team. The Stratascale Cyber Research Unit, the CRU, discovered this. And, oddly enough, it just turned out to be kind of like, oh, when someone wrote and programmed this thing, there was a little bit of a slippage of permissions, I'd like to draw attention to something else, Chris, that Sudo itself is upwards of 30 to 35 years old, and it's only on version 1.9. I think those of you out there who go through product pushes and changes could really take note on Sudo version control, because it is 35 years old and it's on version 1.9.17. And I know some of y'all software out there that is 4 years old and you're on version 13. So just saying, like, you want to talk about well architected software, here you go.
Yeah, well, and I think they probably have a smaller scope than most modern software, but your
I'm
point's
obviously
well
anti.
taken. Yeah. And as you mentioned, it only affects three minor versions of sudo 0.14 through 0.17. So, update it, and like the amount of stuff that's going to be vulnerable to this out there is quite small. And, it is an academic thing, but there is POC code. So, worth taking a look and maybe updating sudo if you've got some Ubuntu boxes running or whatever. And notably, the sudo chroot feature was never intended to provide a strong security boundary, as the Linux man page points out. It was primarily designed to alter path resolution and not to act as a sandbox mechanism. However, the underlying assumption that only privileged users could invoke it proved incorrect in this implementation. This incident also underscores the dangers of using chroot with writable directories and trusting unverified NSS sources in privileged contexts. So, yeah, thanks to all the researchers out there who keep bubbling this stuff up. It's a great learning opportunity and keeps everybody on their toes, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, this next one's a little more in the real world. Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox are both facing distinct, serious threats this week. Chrome from a zero-day vulnerability under active exploitation, and Firefox from a campaign of malicious browser extension targeting cryptocurrency users. Google's security team rushed to release a patch on Monday addressing a CVE, high-severity type confusion bug in the Chrome V8 JavaScript engine discovered by Google's threat analysis group on June 25th and patched the next day. The flaw allows attackers to execute arbitrary code by exploiting memory misinterpretation. While Google hasn't released full technical details, third-party analysis suggests the exploit could lead to remote code execution or browser system compromise, depending on the attacker's goals. Meanwhile, a separate and large-scale threat has been uncovered targeting Firefox users. A group of 45 malicious extensions impersonating popular cryptocurrency wallets such as MetaMask, Trust Wallet, and Coinbase has been identified by Yuval Ronin at Koi Security. This campaign, dubbed Foxy Wallet, is designed to steal wallet credentials and secrets by mimicking legitimate extensions, using fake reviews to manipulate Mozilla add-on store rankings. At least 7 of these extensions are still active on the store as of when this article was written, and embedded metadata suggests involvement by Russian-speaking threat actors. Extension Total, a tool from Koi Security, published a blog post detailing the operation and the current list of malicious extensions. So yeah, 2 stories really here. The first, you got to give it to Google's threat analysis group, discovered on the 25th, patched next day.
Yep.
Keep your Chrome browser up to date. And then this Firefox one, goes back to our friend John Tuckner's interest of fake browser extensions and the kind of security vulnerabilities there. So two different things here.
Absolutely. No, definitely browser-centric threats that kind of got lumped in together. Chris, the moment I read and then you said Foxy Wallet, I was taken back to Otter Cookie and the worlds of Beaver Tail and Invisible Ferrets and whatnot. And here we are with, again, an animal-centric name, of course, borrowed from Firefox in this case. But I think this kind of proliferation that we're seeing of browser extension based threats is going to continue to grow up. Hats off to our friend John Tuckner for kind of leading the security approach charge on this. Of we need to have better controls and visibility around these things, and I just think it's going to be an important enterprise step going forward. A lot of adversaries have already moved or have an extension of their toolbox that works in concert with browser extensions. And I think for organizations, it's kind of like the next way in. Meaning from a security perspective, we've got a ton of controls around like email phishing and stuff. But these threat actors have figured out like, hey, I can make my browser extension look very popular. I can get people to download it. I can get the right permissions given. And I can deliver it through a legitimate store that everyone trusts. And there's so many security mechanisms that get subverted in that whole process. You're not going to a malicious download or browser store. It's the legitimate one. You're not, kind of bootlegging in an extension. You're downloading it and it's getting installed the right way. The permissions that it's asking for are associated with, Firefox itself. So there's not like a malicious pop-up, Chris, or something else where you're like, oh, let me click that thing, and now you've got like a drive-by download or a watering hole. It's actually, kind of folks maybe looking for a particular feature set or a particular functionality or going to the store to find it. They find it, and it turns out being a malicious extension on top of that. And it's just, I think, another area that enterprises need to have visibility into, especially if, and I don't know if there's a BYOD equivalent here, but especially if I can download and install any extensions I want on my corporate device, it kind of creates another vector. And I think adversaries know that too.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a corporate managed asset, corporate managed security software on it, approved browser, but then carte blanche capabilities for installing extensions. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it's another thing to lock down, but I do think it's another point for visibility for folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could almost see like a pull request process for browser installs and having somebody on the team that sort of specializes in kind of knowing what's what to look at for those things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually a potential workaround or
Yeah.
potential fix for this too, is actually implementing some sort of a process for folks so that way they can actually, like, find a way
Get the
to.
tools they want and work the way they
Exactly.
want. Yeah. But
Exactly. And
without
the other side
pulling.
of it too, folks, from an enterprise perspective, might be implement, implement kind of approved browser extensions. If you've got a team that's looking for a particular thing, go and find and approve some extensions that they can download. And then that way you've got better insight. And then you only need to keep your eye on a couple of them as opposed to like the entire population.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the NPM poisoning and really makes me think about like how do we trust these marketplaces,
Mhm.
when there's so many different companies and so many solutions out there and everybody's moving so fast and trying to work with the latest and greatest. It's yeah, how do we verify these things are what they say? I guess with software we have certificate signing. Um, Maybe there's something like that we can get to with these things.
It'd be nice to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We'd like to see that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe our friend John Zuckner has a solution.
Yes, Secure Annex. If anybody's curious, go check him out. He's
There we
uh,
go.
he's all over what's happening in your browser. So yeah, this dual threat landscape highlights the persistent client-side risks inherent in web browsers, especially in enterprise environments where users may unknowingly expose sensitive credentials or organizational assets. Security professionals are warning that browsers, while critical tools, have increasingly become targets for exploitation, either through sophisticated memory corruption bugs or user-focused social engineering via extensions. Tal Zamir of Perception Point cited prior research indicating that over 50% of browser extensions represent a high security risk, noting that even legitimate extensions can become vulnerable through silent updates or compromised ownership. Yeah, that's something John talks about a lot too, is where a developer will, make a fairly popular extension in his spare time, not really meaning to make a ton of money off of it, but then somebody comes along and offers them 50 grand for it. And even though the original owner's intentions were pure and they were respectful of their users, whatever APT with the 50 grand comes in and now they have access to all your browsers. So for mitigation, Chrome users should immediately update to the latest stable builds. That's version 138.0.7204.96.
Wow.
Hey guys, go talk to the Sudo team on Windows and Mac, and V138.0.7204.96 on Linux. Once it becomes available. For Firefox, mitigation requires a different approach. Organizations should implement strict extension allow lists, regularly scan approved extensions, and continuously monitor for suspicious behavior or ownership changes. Koi Security advises that static scanning at installation time is insufficient since extensions can update silently and change behavior post-deployment. The broader lesson here is the need for browser extension governance akin to traditional software controls, continuous, policy-driven, and integrated into existing security monitoring pipelines. It always makes me feel a little warm and fuzzy when I read that last part, and it's everything we just talked about before reading it.
Right? Not
Yeah,
bad. It's a chance for us to validate and be like, see, our advice, our analysis was good.
we might have done some of this before.
A few of these, just a couple.
All right. Ransomware. Feels like we don't hear about this as much
I
anymore.
know. Can you believe it, Chris? We haven't talked about ransomware for a while, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it just like the extortion model became such a big thing. And so anyway, the Medusa ransomware group, active since late 2021, has maintained a consistent and aggressive operational tempo in 2025, Known for targeting critical infrastructure, education, legal, insurance, and manufacturing sectors, the group has now been linked to over 430 incidents globally, with more than 70 attacks already reported in the first few months of 2025. Medusa operates using a ransomware as a service model, combining large-scale file encryption, data exfiltration, and multi-channel extortion tactics. Victims face ransom demands under threat of public exposure on Medusa's data leak sites, which are hosted on the dark web. The dark web. Medusa campaigns begin with a variety of initial access techniques. These include phishing campaigns that deploy malware via malicious attachments or credential harvesting links. They also exploit publicly facing applications. There's a bunch of known CVEs. I'm not going to read them out. Affiliates sometimes gain access through compromised remote desktop protocol credentials, either obtained through phishing or purchased from initial access brokers. Once inside, Medusa actors perform internal reconnaissance using common legitimate tools like SoftPerfect, Network Scanner, and Advanced IP Scanner to identify accessible services and hosts.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yikes. They're back.
They're back.
Wow. 4 years now, 3.5, 4 years, this group has been around, connected to over 430 incidents worldwide. Found this one very interesting, Chris, primarily because, and the thing that I like to zoom in on here whenever we talk about what these threat actors do and how they do what they do, I kind of look at this or think about what organizations can do to protect against it, right? And one of the biggest kickers here, everyone, is either gaining access through an initial access broker, through phishing. Those are both kind of very adversarial centric entry methods, if you will. But then taking advantage of remote access tools like RDP or some other RMMs is really like the point I like to zoom in on whenever I talk to someone about defending against these types of threats. The biggest reason there is this is something, a defender team, blue teamers, SOC team, network engineers, system admins, whoever it might be. This is where you really have the most control and the most visibility, in my opinion. Looking at kind of the article that came from Bridewell, they were talking about adversaries utilizing PS exec and RDP. And I like to call out and just say that, Chris, you're going to talk about kind of the technical side of them in just a moment here. But I like to just call out and say, like, these are things that are easily detectable inside of an environment. RDP works over a very well-known port. PS exec leaves very hallmark forensic indicators behind. And for anyone who's got to think in that detection space, like, how would I ever detect this happening? There's tons of stuff that are 100% true positives that you can get in there. Like, this is not an accidental execution. These are registry keys, process executions, artifacts being left behind. A lot of lateral movement is going to be source and destination based. I mean, all lateral movement is source and destination based, but if you have both of those inside of your environment, you've got like double the visibility capabilities. If you've only got one in your environment, so if the adversary is kind of remoting in from externally, you still have tons of artifacts there available. So detection should be pretty straightforward to write. This is also, I think, an opportunity for organizations to look back and say, hey, could we defend against this type of thing? Could we detect this? From PS exec to batch file execution to registry changes being made. Think about all the different steps along the way. And if you've got visibility and controls in those areas, great. If not, something to improve and you can get much better detection fidelity out of this too.
So once exfiltration is complete, Medusa deploys its ransomware payload, typically via PS exec or deployment frameworks like PDQ deploy. The encryptor, often named gaze.exe, disables services, deletes shadow copies, and encrypts data using AES-256. Ransom notes are dropped in the victim directory, and encrypted files are appended with the .medusa extension. Victims are instructed to reach out via Tox or Tor. Is that Tox? I haven't heard that one before.
Interesting. Let me see here.
I don't spend enough time on the dark web.
Yeah, dark web.
I'm going to need a sound effect for that one, I think.
Let me see. I'm just looking this up. So Tor is the onion router. Tox is another thing that provides secure and private peer-to-peer communication. I guess if your Telegram channel is down, you can rely on Tox.
Some back channels.
I guess so. Tox is something. Tox is completely peer-to-peer. That's why I think that's what I'm focusing on. Yeah, it's probably got a little more secrecy around it.
I might have to go check that one out. Okay, so victims are instructed to reach out via Tox or Tor channels, and in some cases contacted directly by phone or email. No Medusa-related email addresses and .onion domains can be used for indicators of compromise. For evasion, the group employs obfuscation in signed binaries such as certutil.exe and PowerShell.exe, leveraging base64 encoding, encoded PowerShell payloads, and traffic tunneling tools like Ligolo and Cloudflare. Defensive tooling is often disabled using vulnerable drivers or by directly interfering with EDR processes. CISA and Pico Security have also noted use of Windows management instrumentation, registry modifications, and log clearing techniques. As part of mitigation, organizations are urged to enforce MFA, patch public-facing systems promptly, restrict lateral movement through segmentation, monitor for use of common LOTL binaries, and validate any cloud storage usage to detect potential misuse of services like put.io.
Wonderful. Solid piece of advice there, for sure. For anyone who's curious, by the way, LOTL is living off the land, or LOL bins. They're sometimes referred to as well. And this is adversaries who swoop in and take advantage of systems and binaries already installed in the environment or already installed on a system, allows them to move around a lot more secretly.
Okay, this last one isn't specifically security related, but interesting enough given the age of AI that we're all really starting to flow into here. So Cloudflare has rolled out a significant change to how websites handle AI crawlers, positioning itself as the first internet infrastructure provider to block AI-driven scraping by default. Previously, website owners using Cloudflare had the option to block AI crawlers, a feature added in September 2024, and more than 1 million users opted in. Now, the default setting for all Cloudflare customers is to block AI crawlers unless explicit permission is given. This puts a burden on AI companies to ask for permission before scraping a site's content, ideally clarifying their intent, whether it's for training, inference, or indexing for search. This move comes amid increasing controversy over how AI companies collect their training data. Historically, LLM developers have relied on broad web scraping to build out foundational datasets, but this approach has raised concerns about copyright infringement, misuse of personal data, and economic harm to content publishers. Site owners, especially publishers, argue that this practice devalues their work by diverting traffic from their websites to AI interfaces that repurpose their content, reducing ad revenue and weakening direct user engagement. Copyright law hasn't kept pace with this shift, and regulatory efforts are fragmented across jurisdictions, with examples like Meta's recent legal navigation in Europe showing the lack of cohesion. Yeah, I'm super interested in this one for a bunch of reasons. One, if you've been reading and following this at all, there's like a total collapse of the revenue model that most of the web runs on. Because instead of Googling things and then visiting those websites where the people that make those websites get paid for those adverts, people are just talking to ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the LLM is. And so that ad revenue is never being produced by the people that these bots are taking the content from. Yep. So it's a fascinating thing to see. And now that they're going to block it, how are they blocking the AI bots? Is this like a opt-in, I'm going to respect what you say? There's like a little thing in the .robots file that's going to tell you not to scrape it?
Are we going to get another pop-up now? Are we going to get another pop-up? Did you consent to your site being AI scraped or AI crawled? You know, Chris, I find it funny because this is kind of in the true spirit of computers and the internet, if you will, right? I mean, the ad model displaced an entire industry and then became a major revenue generator for a while. And now AI is taking over as the other side of that, right? Because before it was like, all right, well, humans are looking at the web. Let's find out ways to monetize the fact that they're looking at the web. And then it was like, all right, well, humans aren't looking that much at the web anymore, so the revenues are going down. I mean, I'm sure they'll find a way to do it, but it's like, hey, the script has been flipped.
Yeah,
a little bit, right? And I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm letting AI do some scraping for me every single day, and
yeah,
I'm not running scripts in the background or anything, but there's things that I want to know, and I'll be like, hey, AI, tell me about this thing, and it probably was a Google search maybe a year or two ago, but now it's not. But you know, interestingly enough, I still do find myself doing a lot of manual digging and like link validation and verification and stuff like that. So I'm sure that, you know, the revenue model has gone down for a lot of these, or I should say the revenue amounts have gone down for a lot of these. But I do still think that there's like some key positions where humans still have to do their own research and whatnot. That being said, I would be lying if I said I didn't do this every single day. So I totally see how like the average bear's internet usage probably has changed significantly, and I'm sure that's impacted these ad-based revenue models. But with that said, like, it was always up for disruption, right? Everything on the web if we follow the traditional model of what computers, like the hacking culture of the 70s and stuff, and I'm reaching way back in time here, but like the internet and anything computer related has always been up for two kids in their garage to disrupt, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I look at it as you built your economic model on top of a pretty successful internet-based thing. And now the act of how people retrieve information has changed. It was always up for disruption. And Chris, maybe we're speaking very casually here about several billion dollars around the globe and whatnot. Maybe it's even more than that. Maybe it's
I
tens.
believe it's probably more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But that's it. It's like, okay, I mean, so find another way, you know? I akin this a little bit back to there was a joke for a very long time where people would go and I say people just as like this is probably a 10 or 15-year-old story here, but someone would go to like, a super advanced college or a very advanced kind of computer science program or something, Chris, and we're talking like scholarships, free ride and everything like that. And then they would go and they would get this amazing job at this like a world-renowned company and it's like, "Oh, what do you do there?" And it's like, "I focus on how to track your eye so that we line up ads with the right pixel." You
I
know?
A/B test the blue
Yeah.
check here
Yeah, yeah.
button
It's like,
versus the red button. Yeah.
I run color tests to find out which one humans are more likely to click. And I'm like, put that brain matter to something else now, right?
Yeah,
Go figure out
I
how to
think it's
solve.
a yeah, Einstein quote, which may be misinterpreted as the internet does, but it goes that capitalism is like running a locomotive by burning diamonds, and I
Yeah,
feel like you just touched on it right there.
there we go. I like that. That's actually much cleaner than mine.
Yeah, and so ad search across YouTube display network, so all Google stuff, it was $265 billion in 2024.
Whew, okay. Wow.
So I'm sure there's some people that they're a little unhappy with this change. So this Cloudflare model now introduces a technical control mechanism that cuts through some of the legal uncertainty. Website owners can opt in to allow crawling for specific use cases, while most are open to their content being indexed for search. They draw the line at training, where the content might be absorbed wholesale into commercial AI models. Cloudflare's system gives these publishers a way to enforce that distinction at the infrastructure level. This development likely won't have much effect on content for platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, since those platforms are themselves owned by AI developers, Meta, Microsoft, and X.AI, respectively. Social media content, while plentiful, is already viewed as noisy and unreliable, and its overuse in training data risks degrading model quality. An example of this was seen in May 2025 when Grok, the AI developed by X.AI, amplified conspiracy theories about white genocide in South Africa, which most independent and analysts, I can't talk all of a sudden, reject as unfounded. That kind of distortion illustrates the risks of using uncontrolled social media content in LLM training pipelines. Cloudflare's shift reflects a growing push towards a permission-based internet model where content creators retain more control. It's also a recognition that AI development must be aligned with sustainable content ecosystems where creators are either compensated or at least respected in the data acquisition process. Without these guardrails, foundational LLMs risk undermining the very sources they depend on. So here we are. I can't remember who the quote's from, but they said we are now entering the shitification of everything. And that's possibly where the internet is heading with the.
Yeah. I think that final bit you talked about there with content creators retaining more control, I think that has kind of been a long time coming.
Mhm.
I feel like ever since, I mean, it was amplified maybe during the COVID pandemic 5 years ago, but it's funny to say 5 years ago now. But the other side of it is I think kind of the internet shifting towards, this type of an economy has been a long time coming, and we're just continuing to see more of an advance towards that. This is probably an entire episode unto itself, Chris. But I think moving or understanding where and how the models are moving is probably going to be the most important step for anyone who's banked on like the older model of internet ad placements and stuff like that. I think you're going to see a very much a shift towards programmatic access as much as possible with interactive, entertaining content be the stuff that people actually go look for.
Mhm.
And to be honest, Chris, I don't know what this does to sites. Like the one thing that's kind of burning in my brain as we talk about this is like Wikipedia. I don't
Right.
know what this does to Wikipedia because Wikipedia's kind of marketing model, or I should say revenue generation model for anyone who remembers, was at random points throughout the year, you'd see, hey, if everyone here gave us $1, we'd have enough money for the year. Could you give $3 kind of a thing? Like that was their model. But if we take away 10, 20, 100, 200,000 people reading Wikipedia who don't see that message, who maybe don't make those donations, what does that do to a company like that?
Yeah.
What does that do to a company which is kind of geared and built around being non-biased and offering just like being the encyclopedia of the internet? You take those eyeballs away, and all of a sudden, do they lose a little bit of revenue, a lot of revenue? And then we scale that up to like, the ad presence of the internet. And it's crazy to how to think about just how big of an impact AI has had on all these different parts of the world.
Yeah. And it's just the beginning. Like that's
We're
the
just
part
getting started, my friend.
Yeah. Ian, I'm really curious how Cloudflare enforces this. Like, is it honor system, or do they have some tech? Because historically, AI companies haven't been super awesome about respecting copyright and stuff like that. So
I don't know. I liked your idea earlier. Maybe it's just robots.txt. Like maybe it's honestly some sort of a programmatic wall that gets put up where the way that an AI crawler or scraper sees the internet is different from the way that we see it. And maybe they just interject a little point, which is like, nope, not here.
Or just slow it down to human speed. And that
Something
makes
like
it
that,
untenable. Yeah. Awesome, Matt. Well, thanks for getting through another one with me. Always a pleasure. And hopefully there's exciting stuff, but not too exciting stuff to talk about next week.
That's right, sir. I look forward to it. Enjoy your week of freedom this week. I believe we're both celebrating respective freedom days this week, so enjoy it.
Yeah, you too. Take care, and a happy birthday, America, I guess.
We'll see. Maybe. It's a birthday. We'll leave the adjective out.
All right. Take care. Bye.